A 30-year-old man disappeared while driving home to meet his pregnant fiancée. 6 months later, his family found his decomposing body inside their own barn. And what happened between those moments is terrifying. Imagine you're 30 years old, you're working in Germany. Your fiance is pregnant with your child. You're finally heading home because you want to be there when your baby's born. That's exactly what Mateusz Kawecki was doing, or at least that's what his family thought. Mateusz was originally from Poland, but he had been living and working in Germany. On the night of March 28, 2018, he got into his BMW and started the long drive towards Poland. He was supposed to travel roughly 400 miles. His destination, where his pregnant fiancée was waiting for him. Everything seemed normal until the next morning. Around 10:30 in the morning, Mateusz spoke with his father. He said he was stuck in some terrible traffic near the German-Polish border. He told his family he was already in Poland. He also spoke with his pregnant fiancée. And according to reports, he told her he expected to arrive in about 2 hours. So his family wasn't expecting anything terrible. They were expecting Mateusz to walk through that door. But he never did. He didn't arrive, his phone stopped being answered, and suddenly Mateusz was gone. His family started looking for him. Authorities became involved and his family searched for information about his car. They tried to figure out where he had gone, but there was a huge problem. Nobody could establish exactly where Mateusz had disappeared. His BMW couldn't be found. Family couldn't reach him, and the story he had told them about being stuck in traffic would later become one of the strangest parts of the entire case, because investigators eventually discovered that Mateusz apparently wasn't where he said he was. Investigators later reconstructed parts of Mateusz's journey, and according to investigation, he had apparently abandoned the original road trip. Instead of continuing towards his fiancée, he traveled by train and eventually made his way towards the German-Polish border. And then he crossed into Poland on foot. Think about that. His family believed he was driving towards them, but investigators later concluded that he had abandoned the car and was traveling a completely different way, and nobody publicly knows exactly why. The investigators discovered another strange detail. After crossing into Poland, Mateusz apparently checked into a hotel, but he wasn't alone. There was another person with him, and to this day, the person has never been publicly identified in a way that answers the biggest questions. Who were they? Why was Mateusz with them? What did they talk about? And what happened after they left the hotel? We don't know, but Mateusz continued traveling. Eventually, he made his way towards the region where his family lived. And then he disappeared again. For his family, the next 6 months must have been unbearable. They didn't know if Mateusz was alive. They didn't know where he was. They didn't know why he had abandoned his journey. And they certainly didn't know that he was already much closer to home than they originally thought. Then, almost 6 months after his disappearance, something happened that nobody could have imagined. It was September 2018. A terrible smell had been noticed around the family's property. Eventually, attention turned towards the old barn. At first, the smell was assumed to be an animal, something dead, something that had crawled inside and couldn't get out. But when a neighbor went inside to investigate, he discovered something much worse. There was a human body, badly decomposed, and eventually DNA testing confirmed the unimaginable. The body was Mateusz, the missing man they'd been searching for, their son, their family member, the man who was supposed to be on his way to meet his pregnant fiancée, had been inside his own family's barn. This is where the case becomes incredibly disturbing. Mateusz had supposedly been driving hundreds of miles towards his fiancée, but somehow he ended up back near his hometown. His BMW was still missing, by the way, and investigators believe that he had traveled much of the way by train and bus. But How exactly did he get from the bus station to his family's property? And why did he go there? Those questions become central to the mystery. Investigators eventually concluded that Mateusz had died by suicide. They believed he had planned his own death. There was no evidence publicly establishing that someone had murdered him. And that's extremely important because there are plenty of theories surrounding the case, but theories aren't facts. An official conclusion was suicide. However, that doesn't mean every question surrounding the case has a satisfying answer either. This is another reason the case has become so controversial. After Mateusz's body was discovered, his family became frustrated with the investigation. They believed important evidence had been overlooked, and incredibly, they later discovered additional remains in the barn. A shoe containing part of Mateusz's foot was reportedly found after the initial investigation. That raised serious questions about how thoroughly the scene had been originally searched. A later internal investigation into the police response resulted in 2 officers being reprimanded. That doesn't prove a cover up, it doesn't prove murder, but it does mean there was a legitimate concern about how the original investigation was handled. One of the strangest unanswered questions is still the car. Mateusz left Germany in his BMW. Then the vehicle disappeared from the story. Investigators believed he had abandoned it, but where, why, and what happened to it? The car became another piece of the puzzle that made the entire timeline so difficult to understand. Because if Mateusz had already decided to end his life, why go through all of this? Why abandon his car and why travel by train? Why cross a border on foot? Why stay at a hotel with another person? Why travel all the way back towards his family's home? And why choose the barn? Mateusz had a pregnant fiancée waiting for him. He was supposedly going home to meet his unborn child, and somewhere along the way, something changed. We don't know exactly what happened inside his mind. We don't know exactly why he lied about where he was. We don't know who the person at the hotel was. We don't know exactly how he reached the family property, and we don't know why his final journey unfolded the way it did. Authorities ultimately said suicide, but because so much of the journey remains unexplained, people continue to question the case. And honestly, I think that's what makes it so disturbing. Not because we know someone murdered him, we don't. It's disturbing because we have a documented disappearance, a documented body, official explanation, and still so many unanswered questions sitting between the two. Mateusz Kawecki left Germany because he was supposed to be going home to meet his pregnant fiancée. Instead, he abandoned the journey, traveled by train, crossed the border on foot, checked into a hotel with an unidentified person, and somehow ended up dead inside his family's barn. Authorities said he planned his own death, but what happened during those final days? Why did he make that journey home? What do you think happened to Mateusz? Do you believe the official explanation?